Welcome everyone. This is Jonas Bills here, and we also have Ellie here and our special guest Marta and Matt and Darren. So before we start the Ask the Trainer session, I want to do a little bit of housekeeping as always, and I'm taking over for Simon today. So let me share my screen here. Once I find where to do that, here we go. And if you already have any questions, please feel free to type them in the question section of the GoToWebinar interface. And yeah, here we go. As the Maxon Training Team, we do a lot of webinars like this one, and you can find them, or you can find all of them on the Maxon website here under News and Events. They're all listed here. So here we've got the Ask the Trainer session, but this is one. Oh, I just noticed that I'm still in the German website interface. So here we go. It's loading a little bit. Here we go. Demystifying post-production webinars every Monday. We have Universe webinars this month. Next month there's going to be another topic, and yeah. Also, we are going to be on the Maxon 3D motion design show, not just in March, but also on future ones. But let me switch to the motion design show webpage. Here you can see the lineup for next week's Wednesday, where we have Ellie Thanasis, aka Noseman, and Hashi, and myself presenting. And this is going to be quite exciting. Another topic we always bring up before we start is certification. So if you want to get certified and if you want to see this webpage in English, you have to bear with me for a second. Here we go. Well, we have a new certification program, and you can take a free basic Cinema 4D knowledge test right here. You can take the test here, and there's also more about certification. You can read through that on your own. And of course, all of these sessions that we do, all of the webinars, are hosted on our Maxon Training Team YouTube channel. So here you can find all of the recordings of our Demystifying Monday webinars, but also the Ask the Trainer sessions. Everything that we do is going to be recorded, and it's going to be hosted right here. Okay, that being said, we can finally start. And as I already said, we have a special guest today, Marta. And Marta, do you want to introduce yourself? Because I think what you do is really exciting, but I don't want to, to steal your show.
Yeah. You don't want to steal my thunder?
No.
So hi everyone, I'm Marta Svetek. I officially at Maxon am the Senior Community and Digital Marketing Manager, which doesn't actually have a lot to do with what we're going to talk about today. We're not going to talk about marketing. But essentially, one of the many things that I do in life is motion capture. So I started as a motion capture performer, became really passionate about the process and how it can be utilized to create really cool things. I'm a huge gamer, so that was my gateway into it. And all the video games. I'm currently just obsessed with Valheim. Just you can talk to me after that on Twitter. I'll talk Valheim all day, every day. But with motion capture, it just became, just when I started getting into it, it started really blowing up because it also has become over the last couple of years very, very accessible, much cheaper. It used to be something that only the biggest budgets could afford. And now you can actually have a suit. In fact, I have one of the suits that are commercially available right here, and you can do mocap from home. So it's a tool that I very much highlight a lot among artists to make more use of. And ultimately, another man, Demetrius, who works at the company, approached me last year and said, "Hey, you know mocap, we'd like to do a thing for Cinema 4D." And we got together and we ended up recording all of the moves that we have in the content browser for motion capture. And not only that, we had already wrapped on a second shoot late last year. So there's more stuff to come. There's more awesome stuff. And it's very much a library of things that we thought would be useful. And it's something that, will be growing. So it's very exciting. And we're going to be, sourcing ideas for different moves we should record in the future as well. That's kind of the long version of it.
Very cool.
But still really exciting. So yeah, that's really good stuff. And there are no questions so far. So if you have any questions,
just keep going.
And we're going to answer them. In the meantime, I think because Marta already mentioned it, I'm going to jump into Cinema 4D and show you where you can find the motion capture clips that she recorded. And this is here in the content browser. And you can navigate to, let me go to presets, and then we go down to motion capture. And there are two folders in here. One is a model. It's the male puppet character that you can load here. And it's just a male puppet T-pose. And if you play, nothing happens because there is no mocap data applied to it. All of the mocap data is in here. And I think in the first round, you recorded like 42 or 43 different motion capture clips, and you can find them all here. It's crawling, walking, running, fireball. That's
that was actually a fun one. That's part of a tutorial that Hashi's working on that will be featured in that. It was a special request.
Because I was just thinking about featuring it right now, but in this case. So instead, I will just double click.
I think, I think it'd be interesting to talk about sort of some of the different moves and how we went about it. The process of motion capture obviously starts well before you're ever in Cinema 4D. And you have to really think things through to make the most and to get useful data out of it. You can very quickly end up with recorded moves with data that is a real pain to clean. Sometimes it's absolutely just useless at the end of the day if you don't really think through how your character is going to move and what they need to do and how you're going to stitch all the animations together. That's one of the critical things that you need to think about because your data is extremely expensive. That is the expensive part of motion capture. And even if you're doing it at home and you've removed that factor, just working with those files where you've captured, 10 minutes of continuous movement, that's just not going to happen. And you're also never going to have the space realistically to go through an entire scene and do everything, do all the interactions that you have to do. So what you're usually going to do is break these movements down, especially locomotion like this, into much smaller, segments. And so when we were going into this recording, and I was going through the list of moves, and I was trying to plan out this shoot accordingly, and we were working with this wonderful and thankfully very high-end studio that we were able to get into, Centroid 3D here in London. We worked together to make sure that everything was going to work well together. These are also very high quality. I have to stress that the ones that we've made available in Cinema 4D are at 60 FPS, just immaculate movements, all clean, all smooth, wonderful. This is great stuff. This is Hollywood level stuff. But I had to break down the move list between what were going to be like individual moves and what we wanted to loop. The trick with the loop movements, what I had to do as a performer and what Dimitris had to be very vigilant for, and the guys that were running the studio at Centroid, was that I started and finished on the same move so that the animation is loopable. So you think walking simple, right? But realistically, you need to get about 4 consistent steps. And you have to, I always forget whether it's left or right. I'm horrible with left or right, and they always remind me on set anyway. But essentially, when the left leg passes the right leg, that's when the loop starts, right? And you go 1, 2, 3, 4, and you have to then chop it that the next time the left leg passes the right leg. Now, you want your performer to be, if you're just doing a walk cycle, to be very consistent in their steps, because otherwise every other step is going to be that quirk, you know? Same with any other loops of like standing around and waiting, simple stuff. If I do any idle inserts and it's like I decide to scratch my head, and then they drop that into the waiting animation and they drop a little insert where it's like a variation in the, we've all been in video games, I think, or most of us, where you're not doing anything, your character's idling, they're going, and then they like kick a rock or they, scratch or whatever. If I do stuff like this or really bothersome stuff, every few seconds, I mean, it's gonna look like I have lice. The character has lice. It's like, it just starts doing that. So all of these different things we had to consider before we went in. And it's there's other stuff that you have to consider depending on the system you end up using. If you're using a system like the one we did, which is an optical passive system from Vicon. No, actually, motion analysis. Sorry. I usually work in Vicon, but Centroid has motion analysis. Regardless, is the one with the dots all over your body. And you have the cameras around. We had 83 cameras all looking at me. Infrared cameras.
Someone, I'm sorry.
No, go for it. So I was gonna just finish the sentence.
Sure, please. Sorry.
Yeah. So, so with those cameras, you have stuff like occlusion. If I cover a marker, for example, the crawling animation, even a few years ago would have been a real problem because I covered all the markers in the front of my body. So you have to clean that up. You have to make sure that, afterwards, after the recording, you then have the cleanup process where you have to tell the computer, actually, this goes here, this goes here, this goes, retarget those markers, things like that. With inertial suits, it's magnetic interference that can be your worst enemy, anything like that. But yeah, so that's what I wanted to say.
So yeah, someone actually did send in a question for you in advance. Their question is, for someone who wants to get started in mocap / get experience in the volume in a post-COVID world, what would be the best way to do this right now? Best wishes, EC. And but just listening to all of these things that you're telling us about that you have to be very aware of, like, are there things that you found that you had to practice very regularly to sort of get down just for yourself in whatever it is whatever motion you're doing?
Yeah. So depending on the project, the accuracy of my actions and the speed of my actions, and I guess the economy of movement, as some people refer to it, is very important. Now, generally for animations or whatever, you'll have a scene and you just go through the scene. You might chop it up, but it's relatively straightforward. You usually have everything mapped out and taped up and whatever, like you go from here. When you do animations like for this shoot, like library shoots, or for video games, where it's a large volume of individual movements that you don't have one specific use case. They need to be able to be dropped in any point in time. You have to be incredibly accurate in how quickly you do it. I mean, I've had jobs where it's like, okay, so you've got 1.5 seconds to do that turn. You've got 2.5 seconds to walk from here to there. No more, no less, because that's what they allotted for the next thing to happen. Things like that. You'd be incredibly aware of that kind of stuff. I don't have a timer in my head, but you kind of get a feel for it. And the more you practice, the better it is. The other, I think, most basic challenge for anybody wanting to do mocap, you don't have to be an actor. It's like if you're doing mocap for your own project, mocap, technically, you're just a human in a suit. You don't have to be, trained at the whatever academy. One of the biggest ones is turns. So if you can imagine when you're playing a game and you have the 45-degree turn, the gamer's not going to wait for you to take your sweet time to turn 45 degrees or 90 degrees or 180 degrees. They want you to turn realistically, but really fast, because they want to get going. And you have to make sure that you turn, but that you don't leave the spot where you were. So you do a little cross on the ground, and your hips have to stay over that cross no matter how much you turn. That's one of the biggest challenges, because when you turn, you usually turn by stepping out into something. Here you have to kind of spin on that axis, and without looking down, know that you are still there.
Wow.
Yeah, we still have that. It's silly, but it's one of those things that you need to practice at home.
I would fall.
There are
I did fall.
already a few questions coming in for you, Marta, which are of course motion capture related. The first one being, what is the best program for you to record motion capture data?
I think the one that I've encountered the most and people seem happiest with right now is Motion Builder. That was the one. There's also proprietary ones. For example, on the more affordable spectrum, you have the Rococo suit, which is an inertial suit. I can probably explain what the difference between the systems is later on, but they'll have their proprietary Rococo studio. But I think in terms of breadth of knowledge that you can access, in terms of what I've seen sort of bigger professional sets use, it has been Motion Builder. I know it's slightly older, but that was definitely something that I saw as kind of a standard.
All right. Another one here. How long are the moves you stitch together usually? Is it more like 5 seconds or more like 5 minutes?
It depends on the project. You try to avoid multi-minute moves. You're looking at seconds here. Again, it depends on what you want to do. So if you have a reason for a continuous take, you are working on an animated short film, then you're going to try to record as close to that scene, like before a cut, you're going to try to record as close to that as possible. But you are recording a lot of data. Again, depending on the system, you will be recording a lot of data. Obviously, more advanced systems record more data because you'll have more points to record on your body. But I honestly, anything above 10 seconds, I would say is pretty rare. Again, I wouldn't say that there is a specific rule. Not at all. And, experiment, see what works for you. But I think you're setting yourself up for success if you break it down into about 5-10 seconds at most, and go from there and, see what happens. But I'd say it's very much depending on the project. Like for games where you're trying to insert it and have it be triggered by a person going through an interactive environment, that's harder. So yeah, shorter is better. But yeah, I can answer more if you let me know what you're working on.
Yeah, it always depends.
Yeah.
We know that, especially we know that. Another question was, do you only work in a studio, or can you set up a camera outside, say in the forest, and mocap the model moving branches and composite both the mocap and video? So I think this is multiple questions actually.
Yeah.
So first, can you only
answer
shoot
the first half? I can answer the first half, I think. You guys
studio,
can take
right?
the second half. Well, no, not necessarily, actually.
Of course, it depends.
Yeah, no. So I think this is a good place to address the different mocap systems. So you have a bunch of different ones, but there's two predominant types being used right now. So you have, like I mentioned, the mocap, the optical passive, which is your Vicon Shogun, your motion analysis Raptor cameras, all those things where you have a big volume, a big stage, rather like a empty space, and you have all this rigging around you, and you have all these infrared cameras, looking down at the stage and picking up the bounce from those reflective markers on your body. That one is obviously you're in a studio. But you have inertial suits that have come on leaps and bounds in recent years. So you have, those are your Xsens, your Rococos, your oh my God, was it? I forgot this. There's more of them, but Xsens is probably the most famous one. And those work on a suit that has sensors in it. There are no external cameras looking at you. The suit itself has sensors with gyroscopes and everything in them, and are, solve for your body as you move around. And that is certainly a suit that you can take into the woods and record yourself interacting with a real environment. Granted, they need Wi-Fi to work. Although I have had moments, I did a test. I wanted to see if it was possible. So I took my Rococo out to I work with horses as well. Like I do that. So I took it to the yard and put it on 4G and connected my computer and my suit via 4G tethering from my phone, and it worked. It wasn't the most consistent thing, but I got some pretty good stuff out of it. So, if you have that, you can play around with it. But I would strongly recommend having a good source of Wi-Fi so you're not wasting your time. The other thing I would say is look out when you're in a real environment, look out for any irregularities in the ground that you're walking on, because you're going to have to address that or replicate it in your digital environment. Obviously, if you're trying to do a character that's then composited into a live action scene, then that might work exactly in your favor. But yeah.
That's really exciting stuff. Let me just go through the questions here because, can you recommend a particular brand of home motion capture suits, or which was the one that you're using?
Depends on your budget. So XNs are going to be a 5-figure budget for sure. They are, industry standard. MPC and Framework, Framestore, and all those big VFX houses use those. But also smaller, indies. They're like low 5 figures. Whereas the Rococo that I've used, and there's some other ones as well, but those are the ones that I have personal experience in. Rococo is around $2,500, and that is, as far as this goes, very, very affordable. You can also do facial capture with them for some additional fee. You basically, but generally facial capture is very interesting because people have been able to use iPhones for more rudimentary facial capture. I would say if you're doing a realistic human face, it won't be good enough. I can tell you that right now. But if you're doing more like a cartoony character, it'll be more than good enough. The other one is just if you have the rig, the sort of helmet, the head cam setup, the antlers, some of us call it, you can also use GoPros for very good results. And they do support that. So you're looking at about $2,500 for a very decent set. There is also a subscription for like the higher version of their studio's proprietary recording studio software, and they also have some pretty good motion cleaning tools as well. You will always have to clean motion capture data. You cannot escape that.
Do you clean it up, or someone else cleans it up for you?
Oh, I usually, when I record it myself, as in if I'm doing this at home, but if I'm performing for a client, then obviously they have people who are wizards at that stuff.
Blaine was asking, was that Blaine? He was wondering what software you use to clean up your mocap data.
Like I said, Motion Builder is going to be good for that. There's a few other options, but again, I'm just saying from what I've seen, that is the most common one I've seen. I'm sure that some others can comment on more.
So Alberto asked an interesting question about climbing something. Like how does it work if you're asked to climb something? They usually have some sort of proxy or prop for you, or just like you have your own ladder that you carry around?
So I have a bunch of the reference footage from our last shoot that has not yet been released. That's coming with the next release of Cinema 4D. That I can show you where we did record climbing. Let me have a look. I'm gonna have to. I can either send you the clip, Jonas, or
You can also, I can make you the presenter, then you can share your screen.
The pressure. I am afraid. Yeah, just do it. Just do it. Right. Let me know when it's go time.
Are you ready?
Yep.
Then it's now.
Okay.
There you go.
There we go. Does it let me pick which screen I'm showing? I don't know what I'm
Right
showing.
now we see your desktop.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Great.
And
Enjoy.
the taskbar on the bottom. And
Yeah, I'm trying to. There you go. Let me show monitor 2. That's what I wanted to show there, so you can see PC special.
See footage.
You see that? Okay, great. I love it. So you can see, start with a good old T-pose. You start and end with a T-pose, so it's easier to make sure that all the markers are picked up properly, so the cameras can see it. And so they built this I think it's about 3 meters, just over 3 meter high platform. You can see it's quite hollow, so it's not covering the markers. If it was solid, half the cameras wouldn't be able to see what I'm doing. Basically, yeah, you try to do these rigs that are the least obstructive, or there's as little between me, or rather the markers I'm wearing, and the cameras that you can see dotted all around here. So they can pick up the motion from as many sides as possible. The occurrence of markers getting covered is called occlusion, and it can mess up how basically your body movement is being perceived at the endpoint. Like it might try to reassign something somewhere, just say like knee joint missing or whatever, and that can throw everything out of whack. You either then re-record that or you try to clean it afterwards. But I'd say if you spot it early enough, you re-record it without the occlusion if you can. But essentially what you do is like this. You can see we also had a ladder set up so we did this kind of like cliff climbing thing. And the annoying thing is I couldn't grab any of the side things, obviously, because they weren't going to be there. I'm climbing a cliff, not a thing. So we had to have this strap on top that I like pull myself to the top. And fun fact, I had really, really badly cut my finger the day before. And so when I was climbing, I was like, oh, damn it, that hurts. Every time. Well, there's a little report from little behind the scenes. Let's have a bunch of other clips here.
More authentic.
Yeah, exactly. That's
once
real
you climb up a cliff like 50 meters high.
Yeah, exactly. So you do basically
as cutting the finger.
Yeah, that's exactly it. You probably will cut your finger. No, I would say that's when you look at this is yes. So if you're working in a volume and you're working in this optical system, then that's what you're going to be looking for. The pro of working in this kind of system and spending the money on this kind of system is that the system always knows where your feet have contact with the ground or where your body is in relation to the environment. When you have an inertial system, obviously it's just sensors on your body. And
is that the one with the little gyroscopic sensors?
The XNs, for example. The XN suit, it only guesses where your feet make contact with the ground or where you are in the environment. XNs particularly has worked very hard to make that guess really, really good. But it's never as good as this, right? So you're looking at what matters more. You're always making some kind of trade-off. For example, with the XNs, you don't have to worry about occlusion. You don't have to worry about markers being covered. You don't have to worry about being in this kind of space. But you might have to spend some time in post adjusting how the feet make contact with the ground, how gravity can affect some things, and adjusting those things. So that's something to keep in mind when you're picking what to work with. like I said, it's never perfect, but you want to know what matters to you more in your process and what's going to be less of a problem to fix. It's motion capture, start to finish, is problem solving, just like any VFX process. And I've got all these different ones. I don't know if you guys want to see anything more. Like falling was interesting.
Whoa. How do you practice falling?
You don't practice falling because it had to be a loop animation. So I couldn't just go and fling myself off that. You think falling, just jump off that platform onto some cushy things. You saw I had crash mats. But that's not a loopable animation. There's no way that can fall for long enough to make it a loop. So realistically,
Okay.
we had to get our trusty Apple crates out and the little something for my back, and then just a lot of core strength. There we go. Okay, I'm almost there. Almost there. Ready. Okay, we're gonna start falling. And no!
Oh,
I know, it's so ridiculous.
yeah, but it works.
Yeah, you can see how you get the movement you need to get. And I would encourage this kind of problem solving even if you're working at home.
Because this question came in, I think it's somehow related to the falling shot. How would you go about underwater mocap, like swimming? It's gonna be the same, right? You need a lot of
yeah. There's one,
and need a lot of stamina to make this happen.
We did do one. The one version of it. I can't remember which take is the best, so forgive me if this looks like shit. But excuse me, sorry. But yeah, with swimming, you do basically the same thing if you want a loop. It's one of the hardest things to do. And I'll explain a few other options that you might have. See, I'm just like, no, I need to get off the damn thing. But no, not ready. It's just that. That's my life.
Almost
Fell off.
there.
There we go. Side note, I used to be a competitive swimmer, so I can do much better than this.
Reel afterwards.
Sorry?
You need like a blooper reel after, don't you?
Yeah, I know. I really do. For all these ridiculous ones. It also was really weird to be in this volume. I've worked in this volume quite a few times now, and because it was COVID safe, we had a skeleton crew. So it was me and the studio manager and one additional engineer. And then it was Dimi and Orestes on the laptop on a podium. And that was it. But back to swimming. So depending on the budget, this is the lowest budget version of swimming you can do, and it's entirely valid. Then the next step up would be wire rigs. It's quite the budget step up. So you would need to get somebody on a wire. Usually what you use is called a fork. You do that for flying as well a lot, which is actually almost like a crane that has a fork type thing and then two sticks, and you're like in this middle bit, and then they make you go around like wee. You're basically going like, oh, okay, swimming, or flying. And but it's like a stable kind of way to keep you in the air. There, obviously, the biggest budget one and most experimental one was obviously Avatar that we saw that they were doing underwater mocap shoots. But they have proprietary software that they use and create for the purpose of capturing underwater mocap. So it's still quite difficult to do actually in water.
Yeah, that's exactly what Blake was asking about, was your take on the underwater mocap in the new Avatar.
Yeah, I actually have a few friends on the Avatar crew, and so you hear some crazy stories about what they've been up to, obviously, which I can't share here. But from what has been publicly released, you can see that I can't say like they create the software that they need as they go along, which is not, unusual for stuff that has that kind of budget. yeah, not really accessible to us mere mortals just yet, but there's some exciting stuff happening there.
You know, every time I see a clip on YouTube with that fork and the operators in their green suits, that's so foreign to me that I'm like, is that real, or is someone like making like a gag behind the scenes
Yeah.
clip? And
I mean, for the most part, when I was doing this kind of stuff, they didn't need to wear the green suits because if they're not markered up, the cameras can't see them. That's the beauty of it. Like I will never forget one of my first video game shoots, and we were doing the whole thing. And you're standing there, and you know how you do the weapon select. You have everything on your back. Everything's on your back. So you just like, chainsaw, flamethrower, like whatever. But it always helps. Even the most experienced mocap performers can't always get that, like, their hands in the right phantom place. It always helps if you're actually holding something. And so one of the most common ways to solve that is that there is a crew member crouching behind you and handing you things like a pool noodle or a stick or whatever else that roughly gets your hands in the correct way. So like I'd go like this, and they just try to like make sure that I have the pool noodle in my hand. Going, okay, it's a shotgun. It's like, let's do this. It's hilarious.
It
Things
would be
are
cool to
not
have a
glamorous.
game. It would be cool to have a game where you can really choose between those assets that have been handed
I
to you,
know.
the actual weapons. I think that would
It's
be really
great. Sometimes you get like proper airsoft replicas of stuff, and it's great. Most of the time you'll get like wooden cutouts, like almost 2D, like flat cutouts of a gun or whatever else. One time we had a stick and two like those the cardboard tubes that are in toilet paper rolls. So they just gaffer taped that to a stick, and that was my gun. It worked,
Low budget.
Yeah, problem solving. It was like, we don't have a gun on set right now. Let's do this. Just make the right shape, because you're going to replace what's in my hands anyway. You're not capturing the gun. And even if you were markering that asset up, you're still replacing it digitally. So it's all relatively straightforward in that respect. Like you can take a lot of liberties that you can't take when you're filming live action stuff. This is a good one actually to show in that respect. Throwing. I think there's a part here that I messed up because he made me laugh. So one more thing that I wanted to point out. I try to keep my first position after the T-pose as consistent as possible among all things. I tend to do this thing with left foot forward. That's another thing that I picked up from games, because usually then you can take your right foot as your first step. And it gives you consistency across all the other things when you're stitching things together. If you always start with the same foot, it means you can always expect that. That was a personal choice. We went with it. So it is. But you can see I do T-pose. I have my cross like on the ground, and you can see that even the little markers for where my toes are supposed to go. So that it's as consistent as possible. So give me a bunch of pads to throw. And I'm about to laugh because he's making faces at me just off camera. There we go. I can say something because audio is not being recorded. So I have to stop after each one. I have to make sure that I stop moving, go back to my idle pose between moves so we can stitch it.
so are you like aware of your like when you're sort of thinking about like going back to your start, are you also considering like your breathing, or is that not
Yeah.
picked up so much? Okay.
Sometimes you'll deliberately breathe more to make your character look more alive. There's a whole piece around idle animations. You can't just stand still because it won't pick up enough detail. So you actually have to kind of like visibly breathe, but not like. What I wanted to point out with what I'm showing here is we're still rolling here. This is a continuous take that's going to then be chopped up, and all the stuff that's going to be exported is actually only going to be, whatever we choose to be the best take of the movement or the movement that we want. But you can see Stu here, that's his name, Stu. He's a legend. He's able to run around and stand in the volume with me and reset everything for another take without cutting, without ever being picked up or compromising the data. And that's the beauty of some of these systems. But yeah, so you can see just keeps throwing stuff. That's the take.
So Stu's movement doesn't introduce any problematic occlusion.
No,
okay.
Unless he was wearing reflective clothes, which is a big no-no.
I actually have a question for you. I'm sorry if you've answered this. Do you like practice the moves that you do? I know that might be a strange question, but I kind of like looking at you do the moves. They look like the moves that are in characters and character design and games design. But I'm pretty sure if I pick something up and throw it, I wouldn't look like they do in the games.
It's within the constraints of what good data looks like. There's a lot more freedom with it now, which I'm very very happy about. But generally, the first constraint is you always have to go back to your idle. That's just, I mean, for what we were doing here, if I didn't, it would be forgivable, but it ensures consistency to be able to cut between each thing. It's the same thing as when you're recording voiceover and you give yourself a pause, like it's quiet, so you're able to cut in between things. That's the first constraint, and that's why I always go back to this sort of slightly unnatural position. You wouldn't throw and then go back to exactly the position I was in. So that's the first thing that makes it look like it's in a game. The other one is I guess this is more my habit now. When there's different character rigs, and usually it's really helpful that if you see the rig, but here I also had to account for the fact that we wanted to make it as vanilla as possible for the movement to apply to as many different characters as possible. Maybe the rig has bigger clothes, maybe it has other stuff, like sometimes a T-pose will not do for a character that has massive pauldrons that they go into the head, so you do an A pose or whatever. So those kinds of things where I don't want to do too much touching, covering, whatever, or add too much character to something that is being shot for as much application as for the widest possible application. If you told me throw this thing as 20-foot tall ogre, I'd obviously throw it differently. If you tell me throw this like Paris Hilton, I throw it differently. So it's down to direction as well.
Oh,
that's why it'd be different. But here, for this whole shoot, I'm trying to be as neutral as possible while giving variety and energy and movement and what people need. Which is why you also hire mocap actors at the end of the day.
I think we have a Cinema 4D question for you, Marta. Do you find
Me?
yourself making, possibly, hopefully, this would be cool if you said yes. Do you find yourself making motion clips from your captures? Motion clips is, a feature we have in Cinema 4D. Have you created your own library of mocap data with any of these?
Not yet.
From Orion? Okay.
Not yet. I'm sorry. I do want to, and it's on my list, but I have been just so busy. It's been crazy because as a performer, obviously, it's wonderful to work for a company that allows for me to have, parallel careers. But as a performer, I mainly work in voice and motion capture. And because it's so much easier to do COVID safe sets in those for those particular media, there was a boom of it throughout like lockdowns and everything. We can run a set with 3 people here and have everything else remote. Same for voiceover. I have a booth right here. This is my booth. It's in here. And I also, even if you go into a studio, you're in that closed environment. It's quite easy to control who touches what and how close you are to people. So I've been very busy making more things, recording more things. But once I get a break, I will.
That's cool.
Yeah.
But that makes
finished working on a game actually.
Jonas, that makes me wonder what would the benefit be in converting the locomotions in the content browser to
motion clips?
yeah.
Well, the biggest advantage would be that you can mix them, that you can blend between them and so on, because that's not possible with a simple retargeting workflow, because you would have to keyframe the source animated rig and then replace it by another, and this of course will cause like jumps in the animation. So creating motion clips out of this would allow you to create loops more easily, like for example for like a walk cycle, but also if you want to blend walk cycle into throw something, then you can just create those clips and non-linearly just yeah, bring them together, bring the clips together, and also make them overlap, and this will make them blend automatically, which is quite cool. And yeah, this would be the main advantage. You can also retime everything, so that's quite cool. Another question that came up here was what if my character has other proportions than like a human? What if like the torso is big and the arms are like long and the feet are short, like you have with cartoony characters, which are always a little bit more exaggerated? And that's where you would use a retargeting workflow that is based on the joint rotations. So that's absolutely no problem. We also have that inside of Cinema 4D, where you can create like a character definition for the source rig or the source character and the target character, and then you can transfer the motion over to the target character, the motion from the source character to the target character.
Yeah, and I would say probably the most complicated difference in those things that you can introduce is if you're not doing a bipedal character, if you're going to a quadruped, aka a character with 4 legs or more, then it starts getting tricky. But let's say 4, because you have arms and legs here, so you can do quadruped capture for with a human performer. But it does get tricky, and you have to get a little creative with the retargeting to solve for quadruped movement. Sometimes people just like when you have the budget to make a lycra suit, they're actually cheap to make, and the markers and the lycra are the cheapest part of this. You can have a suit made for your dog or something. You'll get very good quadruped movement from that, but that's the trickier part. If you have a bipedal character, you're making your life easier.
Yeah. Yeah, it's cool because here we've got another question that is referring to animal movements and how do you mocap animal movements and actions? And one thing I have in mind, one thing that I remember, I saw a making of, I think it was Planet of the Apes, where
you have the arm extensions.
They created arm extensions for the actors, and then they had to like move like gorillas and so on.
Ape movement is a huge field of study actually in mocap. Ape and creature movement. I realized early on that my back is not in the right, like I've had some injuries in my life, and my back is not going to forgive me for becoming a creature actor, so I kind of steered away from that. But I mean, again, chances are that the performer or the thing that you're going to have, that you're going to be using, performer, animal, whatever that you're going to be using in the to capture the motion with, is not going to have the proportions that your character does. And so it's going to be a matter of getting creative, and I defer to you guys to get into more details of how you do that in Cinema 4D. But you're going to probably have to sort of customize and think outside the box around how you're going to retarget that once you have a rig ready.
Are there cases where you would,
too?
Yeah, are there cases where you would really like mocap a real animal? Like, let's say you want
Yeah, plenty.
the motion
In fact,
capture of a
Central.
cat. I think shooting motion capture for a cat is incredibly difficult because the cat never does what you want.
So if you look up Centroid 3D on Instagram, for example, they have done a lot of animal capture because they have also this mobile studio. So they were able to take their mobile motion capture studio and set up all those cameras in, you know, a riding arena and everything. And so I know that for Assassin's Creed, they did camel capture. They had a guy riding a camel, and the camel was wearing lycra and markers. Horses, they did the greyhounds that race around. They did that for a game as well. They did dogs. They've done so many different animals. And you can't do that. And maybe it's a matter of dropping them a line for more information. But yeah, you absolutely can do that. It usually involves, you know, a lot of preparation for how you're going to handle that data and how you're going to clean that data thereafter. I've never done it myself, so it'd be remiss of me to tell you how to do that. But I know that it's good to do your homework, and make sure that you've done some tests, maybe even just, you know, getting on all fours or seeing how freely downloadable. There's always data that you can download freely or you know, for a very small amount of money, and see how that works. Open it up and see, and reverse engineer.
Yeah, that also was a question earlier on the platforms where you can download like mocap data.
I think Miximo is the most famous
Miximo
one.
is, yeah,
Miximo is the biggest one.
Yeah, but are there others? What are the royalties on them?
I'm not sure because I don't buy it. I'm usually the one recording it.
Yeah, you do this, of course.
Miximo is the one that people tend to go to like by default. There are other ones. I know that in the Rococo studio you have direct access to some other ones. There are other public libraries of mocap data. I think it's just a Google away. But Miximo is the one that everybody goes to.
Yeah, it's also the one that we support inside of Cinema 4D with our Miximo control rig.
Yeah, it's when we decided to record this data, one of the first things that I wanted was that, okay, so what's the difference between what we're offering in Cinema 4D? What's going to be the difference between that and Miximo? And the data that we provide is much higher quality because we spend that extra, you know, the extra time, money, whatever. And, you know, with Centroid, they do everything to an extremely high standard. So the quality of those animations is going to be very, very good.
Yeah, it's good to hear that you were already working on more of them.
Yeah. Gotta do
and
it.
It's exciting to see like climbing and swimming and
I invite anybody here to actually, if they have any, you know, requests for what they'd like to see us record next. It probably will be a little while before it becomes available. But if there are any requests for moves, we're very welcome to hear them. We'll try to make them a reality. I also have, you know, you can imagine doing this for a fair few years now. I also have a lot of very specialist performers in my Rolodex. So, you know, if somebody wants, I don't know, wushu kung fu moves or whatever, like I can bring somebody in to do that. Sadly, I won't be able to do those myself, not to the standard that, you know, we would be required. But, you know, if you want somebody failing at doing those moves, then I got you. It's good. Got you.
Cool.
But yeah, I think you can start. Like, do you want me to share any more clips, or would you like to take control back?
I can take control back. Maybe because we've got 5 minutes left, I can just show the workflow regarding the retargeting and the like applying the mocap data to characters. Well, let me just grab back everything.
It is like really funny when you do these shoots and it's for the most basic locomotions. What like the shoot that you saw there would be called a locomotion shoot, and you're like putting all this pressure on the act of sitting down and sitting down and clapping, or walking forward, and you're just thinking like, am I really getting paid for this?
Yeah, that's the cool thing in this branch, that like fun or hobby and profession are somehow, well, it's not like a hard border or something. It's a transition, and many times it's much closer to fun and hobby than it is to like being a
Yeah, no,
profession.
I love it.
Really cool.
If you don't love it, you wouldn't go through the trouble.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow. Really good question came in. How would you mix hand animated moves with the locomotions?
That's one for you guys.
Yeah, that's I imagine that's going to be tough because it's going to depend greatly on the hand animated move.
And also on the style of animation, and also how complete the mocap data is. So if you have mocap data that like only covers everything until the hand, but not the fingers, for example, you would have to reanimate the fingers, or especially with all of these Miximo clips, you don't have any facial animation, so you would have to add this afterwards. So yeah, and also the Miximo control rig is a way of how you could mix it, because you can just download the Miximo animation, apply the Miximo control rig, and this will then allow you to create variations of the animation, like if you have to step on an obstacle, or if you want to create like a special mood in a walk cycle, so you can lower the shoulders and bring down the head so the character is sad, or make it happier, or whatever you want. So
I
yeah,
just remembered something I was very remiss to omit in terms of motion capture systems. If you want to get started, there's a great app called Moves by Maxon. If you have an iOS device, you can do stuff there.
Yeah, and also facial capturing.
And facial capture, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Let me quickly show you how you would apply some motion capture data from the content browser, the ones Marta recorded, to a character. First of all, what you need is a character definition, and you find this here. This is the character definition tag, and if you open up the manager, you can see that here we have all of the body parts, and you can see that, well, here are a number of joints applied to the different body parts. So here we've got the hips, and the hips joint is applied or assigned to the hips, definition, the hips body part, and so on. So that's the same with all of them. If you are using a Miximo rig, you can just extract the skeleton and it will do all of the character definition automatically for you. If you don't, you have to do it manually, but you can set up the strings to include and to exclude to automate the whole thing, and you can load and save, or save that as a preset and then load it. And for the mocap stuff that Marta recorded, this has already been set up. That's the cool thing. So we have a character definition tag here on the target character. And if we go to the content browser, and let's just double click the jogging loop again, just to bring it in, and let's hit play, then you can see that the rig is moving away, but the figure is still standing here. And what you need to do is you have to make sure that there is a character definition tag on the source animation. And as I said, that's already prepared. So here you can see this is the character definition tag of the jogging loop, and it's already named probably jogging loop. And everything you need to do now is you go to the motion solver tag. That's the second part of the retargeting workflow. And then you just drag and drop the jogging loop character definition in here, and immediately you see that the character snaps onto the motion, onto the animated clip. And then if you hit play, you can see that we have the jogging loop. Right now it's in place, but you can see that the original animation is walking away, and everything you need to do in order to make that happen as well for the target character is you need to place it as a child of the motion offset. So by default, well, not by default, with every like walk, jogging, or running loop, we have this loop in place, and then there is a motion offset with the which is just a null moving in the right speed. And now that the puppet is also a child of the motion offset, you can just hit play, and then it will run away. And that's basically it. Cool. Yeah, we are already hitting the 1 hour mark. That was very fast. So
It's
it was a lot of
fascinating
fun.
too.
It was really exciting. I didn't
Yeah.
expect it to.
Thank you so much, Marta.
Oh, no worries. I'm glad I could provide some information. I do notice that I was sneaking through the questions a little bit. Forgive me. There's a question around the future of mocap and things like that, and I think it's very interesting. It's a very interesting question because I don't think it's either going to be optical or inertial. Right now, those are the best solutions to the problems we have to capturing motion. But I think the next one is going to be more around volumetric. The problem with pure motion capture when you're creating, the motion capture kind of started actually in the medical field to assess your gait, your movement, your biomechanics. But the problem in using it creatively and animating characters around that, for example, is if you have a human and you have clothes physics. Right now, they still largely look like they're painted on, right? And because you're trying to layer everything, that's a lot to solve. If you can omit all of that and capture the character or the actor, at least I'm saying in photorealistic stuff like movies and things like that, where you can just record that as best you can when the person is already dressed the way they are, and bring that into a 3D environment realistically. That's true motion capture technically. That's truly capturing that and bringing it in. So I think it's going to go towards volumetric capture, but that's not going to make pure motion capture obsolete either. I think it's just going to make it cheaper, which is good. The cheaper, the better, and more accessible. So I think that's where things are headed, sort of 10 years down the line. We're still going to have all of this. This is still all going to be a thing. But I think that there's going to be that fundamental change is going to branch out into more specific use cases for what you're going to use. So I just wanted to give my 2 cents on that.
I'm glad you found that one because I wanted to bring it up for you to answer. So
yeah.
Thank you for that.
Oh, that's a very good question.
Yeah, very cool. And yeah, also a good one to close this whole thing, to wrap up, because we are overrunning again. Surprise.
Yay.
Fine.
But today, because we have a special guest, we are allowed to overrun.
Oh,
Yeah,
stop.
it's
yeah, guys, as always, we are recording this session, and you will be able to find it on our Maxon Training Team YouTube channel, as I already mentioned in the beginning, where you can also find all of the recordings of our Demystifying Monday webinars and all of the past Ask the Trainer sessions. And yeah, next Monday we have another Demystifying webinar, and we hope to see you there. And also, a little reminder that next Wednesday we have the 3D motion show, and Ellie and I are going to present there, also Noseman and Hashi. So definitely check these out. And yeah, I hope to see you next time. Please send in your questions also via email. And yeah, we do our best to answer them.
What's that email address?
training@maxon.net. Yeah,
Okay.
That's it. Thanks for mentioning. It's cool. Yeah, just send us an email. Bye. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, guys, have a good week and a nice rest
Thanks for
of the
having
day.
me.
Thank you, Marta.
Thank you,
It was
Marta,
very
for
cool.
being here.
Hey.
And with this, I will wrap this up. So,
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
goodbye, everyone.